Today, I'm very excited to have as my guest on Stories Worth Telling David Premo. David is a microbiologist scientist who used to do work with a scientific magazine and suffered a stroke, had aphasia as a result of it, and has had an amazing, interesting journey. So, David, welcome. So glad to meet you and know you. And David
Okay.
has started a group that's called Articulate Aphasics. And David, you said that aphasia is something that is kind of not really understood in our world today. Can you explain to me what aphasia is?
Well, aphasia really goes back centuries. The word in Greek means speechless, and aphasia is an inability to speak normally, usually as a result of either a stroke, which is my case. People also have injuries. Some people have had surgeries, and that leaves them unable to speak with the normal portion of their brain. Consequently, we have to use a process called neuroplasticity, which essentially is a portion of my brain that I don't use now, teaching it to speak, which is a process, an
It's a huge
ongoing process.
process, and I would consider you yourself. I would say that you are a hero and a warrior to fight and regain some of your skills that you have had well conditioned, developed, but all of a sudden gone in a day,
Yeah.
right? Do you want to talk a
Yes.
little bit about David, what the actual stroke experience was like?
Well, for me, I went to bed normally. I felt fine. I had no problems. I had no indication that anything was wrong with me. I certainly didn't have much, any of the typical foretelling uh, problems that might predict a stroke. I wasn't overweight. I didn't smoke. I stayed fit. And as I said, I went to sleep one night and I woke up with my wife shaking me, saying, "What's wrong?" And I said to her, "I have no, what are you talking about, Jane? What do you mean? Nothing's wrong." And she never even responded to me. She just picked up the phone and called 911 because I had a stroke. She was a nurse and she could realize that my voice was slurred, my one side of my head was drooping, and I wasn't making much sense or moving normally.
So the good news is that your wife was a nurse, and so she called medical assistance immediately, got you to a local medical facility, and they began to remediate to help you to alleviate as much as possible whatever the symptoms were, right?
Well, I would like to say that was true. She did get me to the hospital, but they really didn't do anything. There's a shot that people sometimes take that would dissolve a clot, which is what I
Mm,
had.
mm.
However, since I had been asleep, they don't know exactly when the clot started. And you have a small window of time between when the blockage starts and when you can have the shot. I was outside of that window. So really all they could do was caretake me, give me an IV, and try to find a way to get me into rehab.
Well,
It
I'm
took
sorry.
a
That's an
couple of
unfortunate circumstance. How often do people have strokes? You know, you talk about it as people age more and more, it seems like it's kind of common, right? I have three friends right now that I've had for a lifetime, and they've all had their husbands have strokes recently.
Well, there's about 2 million people who have a stroke every year in the
Mm,
United States.
that's pretty significant. So your journey was then that you got into a rehab center and they said you're going to be here for a month. Did you stay
Right.
there for the entire month?
No, I was there for about a week. The
A week.
advantage, because I had stayed fit, my muscle memory kind of helped quite a bit, and I didn't have the falling concern that people have. Usually, one of the reasons they stay in rehab for a while is people have lost the ability to move very well, and they
Mm,
were always afraid that someone would fall.
mm,
That's one
mm.
of the two things that kills us. The other is the inability to swallow, and people try to swallow and they choke. That's one of
That
the
wasn't a
reasons.
problem for you. You could still chew and swallow. That wasn't dysphagia, is what they call it in the field. Dysphagia wasn't something that was a concern for you. But you
No,
did
I,
work with a speech pathologist, and what kind of things did she have you do?
well, first of all, I did have some difficulty swallowing.
Oh, you
That,
did.
yes, that dissipated in about a day or
Oh,
two.
good.
The
Good.
speech pathologist, essentially, we started out making sounds because I
Hmm.
couldn't say a word. But after the sounds, we moved to words. And then after the words, we moved to different words, larger, more syllabic words, finally to sentences, and ultimately to paragraphs. And all I was reading everything. When I would read something and make a mistake, she'd make me stop, re read the same passage 5 times, and then move on. If I made 3 mistakes in the process, she would make me go back and start the whole thing over again.
That
I
seems
asked her
hard.
if
She was a hard worker, huh?
Yeah, she was good. I asked her if I could get the copies of her book, and she said, no, but I'll photocopy the pages that we use. So every time I had a session with her, I would get the paper, pages, go back to my room and practice because I knew my brain was needed really to
Stimulation, right? You wanted
configure.
the stimulation, and sounds like a lot of determination. You had tenacity. You really wanted to accomplish this.
One of my speech therapists, but I think it was my physical therapist, told me that I was either the best patient she had or the most stubborn man she had ever met.
Well,
I
I
think
think
there's,
I would take that as a compliment. So
yeah,
kudos
I
to you
think a little
because
bit of both are necessary.
no, you do what you need to do to be able to get back and operating again.
That's right.
And it sounds like you still had pretty good what we think of as cognitive functioning. You could still think, you still had ideas, you
Mhm.
still understood the ways of the world, but
Yes,
you just didn't have a way basically of expressing what you wanted, expressing what you needed, telling people what you thought or how you felt, right?
yes. In fact, I have a comedy routine when I talk about trying to order food in the rehab.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Well, you said that at rehab they give you a lot of bacon and eggs, which doesn't necessarily align with what I would expect as far as nutritional standards and best practice, but that's interesting.
It kind of puzzled me as well.
Mm.
But
So,
eventually I got to bacon and eggs. They started me out essentially on ground everything.
yeah, I would think
Craft.
maybe some grits because you're in the South. So maybe some grits and maybe oatmeal, some soft puree type cream of wheat.
Yes, and a lot of ground salmon and ground meatloaf, which to
Mm.
me looked like cat food.
Don't want to confuse that with your
No,
cat. Yeah, if you have one, I don't know. But anyway, so that was an interesting journey. You're there for a week, you get home, your bedroom is on the same level as your front door, so you
yes.
don't have to worry about climbing stairs. But you said you learned how to climb stairs again. Would you tell me about that? Because I thought that was a really interesting
Well, there were
process.
the two things that they wanted to make sure that I could do before they released me from rehab was climb stairs without using crutches and to be able to walk around. So we took a walk around the building and a little bit into the garden, and we climbed up a flight of stairs and back down, and they were convinced that I wasn't going to fall and kill myself.
Mm. Well, that's good. And then do you have a couple of stairs that lead to your front door? Was that why it was necessary?
No, I think it was just a safety measure.
A safety measure. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
because in life we've got to deal with stairs.
Exactly, right. Not everything is a ramp. That's right. Yeah. So you got home and you continue to do your reading and work with your neuroplasticity. Do you want to explain? I know you understand what neuroplasticity is, but maybe all of our audience doesn't, and maybe the importance of working and constantly using your brain, using your mouth, using your articulators to speak, why that was such an important part of your rehabilitation.
Well, our brain is not fully utilized. And every time we learn something new, it's like neuroplasticity. We're changing the way my brain works. When I have lost the ability to speak, I have to do the same thing. I have to learn to speak again. And that's why it's so much like a child. When the speech pathologist had me just starting out with sounds and then words and then larger words. And I have to practice that constantly.
Hmm.
When I got
Hmm.
out of rehab, I would read everything aloud. If you send me an email, I'd read it aloud. If you sent me to the store, I'd be reading the stale signs in the grocery store. Sometimes people would kind of look askance at me. The other thing that I had to do is I had to restructure the muscles in my mouth. And there are
Because
very
there had been some kind of atrophy, or tell me about that.
well, one of the things that is a hallmark of the stroke is a droop in your face.
Mm,
And when my face drooped, I could no longer move my mouth to create the words. So I have my brain not being able to do it, send the signal, and my mouth not being able to receive the signal. So I have
mm,
to go through the whole process, thinking about how to say the word, practicing it, thinking, practicing. And the best way to do that is to constantly read and read aloud.
mm. That's fascinating that you did that. And then you told me about how you relearned to walk upstairs. Can you tell me about that? How you had a similar process that you told your brain, or your brain told your legs and your arms, like basically how to move, it's called proprioception, moving in space, how to align your body. Would you explain that a little bit?
I think of that is primarily because I had always stayed fit and I had
Mm,
muscle memory. I knew how to climb stairs. I had to watch my feet and do it slowly to make sure that I was doing it correctly, but it wasn't something that I had to relearn.
that's amazing. Now, you worked with a physical therapist after that, after so many weeks of therapy. Did you get discharged and take on a personal trainer to help you with some of this?
No, though when I left uh, the rehab, I was done with the physical therapy. I had a little bit of what they call occupational therapies
Sure.
to do that because couldn't use my right hand, and I still don't have any feeling in my right hand. I can use it, but only if I can see it. So things like buttoning a shirt,
Are difficult. So if you put your hand in your pocket, are you able to know what's in there? No.
nope, could be
But
could
if you
be
put your hand in your
keys, could
pocket and
be
pull something out, you can look at it. That's interesting. Do you
yeah.
have,
Well, I usually can't pull something out. I can put my hand in my pocket, feel something, and I have to reach around with my left hand and take it out.
oh, okay. Okay. Interesting. Okay. So the important thing I think that I really want to uh, emphasize, I guess, is the important work that you did with regaining your speech and then developing a group that's called Articulate Aphasics. We've already talked about what aphasia is, but then articulate, just really just to be clear with your speech, that sort of thing. And you previously were a Toastmaster. And for some of our viewers, perhaps they don't know what Toastmasters is, but they should look it up. It's over 100 years old now
Yes.
and helps people with public speaking. But the motto for Toastmasters is find your voice. Am I correct on that?
Yes, find your voice.
Find your voice. And I think
It's,
that this is such a quintessential program that you have helped to develop because you're online and you welcome people who have have aphasia or some kind of neuro uh, d loss, neurological loss. Can we say that?
yes,
And we meet and you meet on Thursdays, every Thursday at 7 p.m. and it's an open club, right? And people come from all over.
it's 8 Eastern, and yes, we have people as far away as Hong Kong who are members.
That's amazing. That's just phenomenal. How many members do you have currently?
About 30.
That's amazing. And what a gift you are giving to people. Now, you are a DTM, which is a Distinguished Toastmaster, and you are a co-host of this group, and only people who have neurodiversity, I don't want to say neurodiversity because that's a whole nother category, but
Yeah,
loss,
neurologically,
neurologically
yeah,
impaired.
yes,
Okay. So only people who are neurologically impaired are able to be members of this group.
correct.
Well, like you let me stop in and join a meeting, but I'm not allowed to join the group.
No,
Right, right. But so live your voice. So you have a couple of quotes, I think, that we should bring in now. Oscar Wilde is one of your favorites.
oh, life is too important to be taken seriously.
Right, right. And I know my conversations with you, David, you have a great sense of humor. So with your sense of humor, you're able to laugh and understand that, life is mysterious. Don't take it too seriously, right?
Right.
So that's really important. So talk to me about what happens at your meetings and with articulate aphasics.
We have, we do, we follow everything that Toastmasters does. Like any other club, with the one exception that everybody in there has aphasia. And we started the club because I was talking to a guy in California, Kansas, who was a psychologist who had aphasia. And he became a runner, very successful person. But he never went back to his profession because he had aphasia. And I said, well, why don't you try going to Toastmasters? That helped me greatly. And he said, I would be a little bit intimidated to go to a room full of people who are speakers, and I'm the only one with aphasia. And I could get that. I could understand that.
Of course.
So it didn't bother me when I came into Toastmasters the second time. I just knew it would help me. So I started this group, and everybody who's there has different abilities to speak. We have some folks who can barely say a sentence. We have some folks who are much better speakers than I am. And everybody has a role each meeting, and everybody has an opportunity to speak and has the ability, has an opportunity to improve. The people who, for example, cannot go beyond a sentence, they start out in very small roles, but they're part of the club and they can progress and will progress. And one of the things that about the club is there's a great bond because we all have the same thing. We're all going for the same reasons and we support each other. And it's fun actually.
It's fun. It's very fun. Well, and I was very impressed with the meeting that I was able to attend and just saw that the support, the network was just so phenomenal. I think sometimes, especially after the pandemic, after we had COVID, people were isolated and people are lonely. And I think at this point in time, to be able to click online and go to a Zoom meeting and have a group of peers who wants to hear what you have to say listens intently, follows up with supportive comments or questions and learns from what you have to say, I can't imagine that there's anything better than that.
Certainly agree.
So thank you for doing that. That's just so phenomenal that people are able to access this and to be a part of it. So I guess what you would like to do is to grow, and I'm imagining that there could be a number of these articulate aphasic groups. We couldn't have the same name, but we
Right.
could have a group that would be similar in different locations and continuing to help people to grow their voice.
Well, Toastmasters is international, and there's certainly no reason that we couldn't have many groups. Prime, probably we were at about 30 people now. If we hit 40, it's time to split and
Mm,
then
mm,
have two groups of 20 and then
mm.
grow from there.
That
And
sounds
other
like an
people, if someone wanted to do the same thing that I did, I would be happy to work with them and suggest how to go about it.
Okay, okay.
Because
So,
as
David,
I
how
look
do
at,
people get a hold of you? You're on LinkedIn. You've done a TED Talk. Are you on Facebook? How can people get a hold of you?
yes, all the above.
Okay, all of the above. And also through the Toastmaster site, the
Yes,
Articulate Aphasics that's
yes.
on the
If
8 o'clock
you
on
put
Thursdays.
in that, one of the reasons that I picked that name is because it always comes up first alphabetically.
You want to be first
Articulate
in line. I
Aphasics.
love that. That's great. So that's a great opportunity for people. Now, when I went to the meeting, I was really impressed by the woman, and I have no idea what her name was or really what her story was, but she was talking about adaptations that were made to her car so that she was able to drive again. And I think she'd been homebound for a while. So once she was able to have things put into her car, she again was able to drive. And I thought, that's the kind of message that we want to give each other in a group like this, that people can regain some of their independence and capacity that they lost because of this blood clot that impacted their brain. So, and are there other examples of things that have moved you that you like as far as some of the stories that s- stories and speeches that people come up with?
Oh, sure. There are people who have great successes. There are funny things too. We have two people in our group for whom English is not a primary language, and the people will start talking and all of a sudden switch to a different language in the conversation.
Oh, that's
That's kind of
interesting because maybe their first language is different and then they can retrieve that more quickly and then explain something and then they almost have to rehearse it. That's
right.
interesting. That's really fascinating. That's interesting. Now, the other thing I think that we should talk about, David, is how important it is for people to maybe give you time. When you have a conversation, people need to allow for you to formulate your thoughts and formulate the words and move your articulators, your lips, your tongue, your teeth, your voice, all of your articulators to be able to produce the sounds that you want to produce. Would you like to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. One of the reasons I went back to Toastmasters is because I reached the point where my speech pathologist said, "You're finished." I said, "What do you mean I'm finished? I don't speak the way I want to." And she said, you speak well enough for your insurance." So
Not
that
well
was
enough for
gone.
you or your wife, right?
Yeah.
You need more. You wanted more. That's good.
And I was home I was out with all of our family, and it was you know, people chatting back and forth and a lot of banter back and forth. And I couldn't keep up with it. Mentally, I could, but I couldn't keep speaking at the same rate. That's why I went to Toastmasters. And the one thing that I love about Toastmasters is it gives me an opportunity to continue speaking until I can get to the point where I can not just communicate, but really participate in life.
That's
And that's
interesting.
to me
It's
the
not just
key.
communication. Let me reiterate that, David. You made such an important point. It's not just communication, but it's participation. Having that turn taking in conversation is so important, and giving yourself the opportunity to be engaged. I mean, at
Yes.
the end of the day, that's what everybody wants, right? To have people understand.
Hmm.
Right, right. Now, you mentioned something the other day when we were speaking that sometimes people hear you talk and don't have respect, is how I would describe it, for your intellectual capacity because your speech is a little bit slower than probably the typical rate. People think, oh, hmm, you know, not the sharpest knife in the drawer, right? Would you like to talk about that for a second?
Yes. Aphasia has nothing to do with intellect. It doesn't in any way diminish a person's cognition. It simply diminishes the rate at which a person can communicate, speak. And the one thing that I used to ask my wife to not do was don't finish sentences for me. And that helped because that gave me an opportunity to develop, again, my own pace. I'm a member of the church vestry where I go to church, and someone once said to me, "You're very thoughtful, you're intelligent." I said, well, thank you, but why do you say that? And she said, "You always pause before you speak." I said, "Oh,
Mm.
thank you." She didn't realize I was trying to say of how to say what I wanted to say. It wasn't because I was cogitating.
But what an important lesson that is, I think, for people to have respect for your intellectual capacity and your intelligence and your life experiences. And then on top of that, to allow you to have the time to execute, to form you formulate okay, but it's the execution of the words and
Yes.
actually getting the neural pathways, the muscles in your mouth to be able to formulate and orate, right?
Yep.
Okay,
And
okay.
sometimes I have to think of a different word. I was having
Mm,
a conversation recently and I had to use the word stethoscope. And that was very difficult for me. So I finally talked about, like a doctor wears around his neck normally to
to
listen
listen
to
to
your
your
heart.
heart.
Yeah.
Describing things by their features is a really important skill that I used to teach people when I worked with them. If you can't think of the word or if you don't know it, rather than saying and ah or that thing, then using
Yeah.
non-specific vocabulary, but to describe the item by its function or its features or where you would find it. So all of that's really good advice. So you had another interesting quote that you really appreciated, and I think it was William Johnston, and he was the butler for our
Abraham Lincoln.
President Abraham Lincoln. Would you like
Yep.
to?
Well, a friend of mine who at the time when I was in rehab sent me an email with that quote in it. And it is, if it is to be, it is up to me. And that's
Mm,
the position that I took. I, much as I commend all the therapists that I have had, ultimately it's up to me. I have to practice. I have to be determined. I have to be willing to not succeed, if I don't, I have to stumble
right,
and
right. And
result.
I think that's part of the process, right? If you fall down, you have to get up. Like we
Yep.
don't, nobody ran a marathon or nobody learned to walk in one day. It's always a process. So even though you might have been a really good student in school and it came easily to you, this is probably one of the biggest hills that you've climbed.
Yes, indeed.
Mm. Well, kudos to you and thank you so much for this opportunity. Is there anything that we haven't shared or talked about that you would like to review? Anything I didn't ask that you'd like to talk about?
Yes, I would like to suggest anybody who has aphasia or has someone who is close to you who has aphasia, come to one of our meetings, listen to it, see the people, enjoy the camaraderie and the spirit de corps. And I think you will be amazed at how much more we can develop apart from all the things that we do in therapy.
Hmm. The therapy isn't enough. The therapy leaves you to your own demise, I think, or your own skill set or your own determination to determine what's next and how can
Yeah.
I live my best life. So, and you're continuing to do that. So just go to Toastmasters and look up Articulate Aphasics, look up
Just
the
stick it in Google, Articulate
Stick it in
Aphasics.
Google, the old Google. So thank you so much, David. And I really enjoyed and appreciate this conversation that we had. Oh, there's something I wanted to show you. Um, it's a book I found. Where did it go? Um, it was written by a speech pathologist and it's Daddy Talks Funny. Have you heard about that?
No, I haven't.
Um, Okay, well, it basically oh, here it is. Oh, why is Papa talking funny? So here's the book. Can you see it? Not really. Oh, there's a good. Is that a sweet spot? The name of the book is Why is Papa Talking Funny? And it's written by a speech pathologist. And it's a book that explains why if you're a grandfather, an older person, and if you have a granddaughter, all of a sudden they used to play these games and then they can't anymore. And that whole process by which grandpa or somebody who has aphasia can learn to speak again and how that young person can understand it. I would imagine it's a little bit scary at times that somebody doesn't know what happened to you and doesn't really understand. So, having that explanation, I think, is very, very helpful. So, all right. Well, David, this has been absolutely amazing. Thank you, and look forward to further conversations, future opportunities as new things pop up. I'd love to have a conversation again.
Great. Thanks, Kate. Every
Thank
Thursday
you.
at 8, join us.
Okay, Articulate Aphasics at Toastmasters.